Hey, everybody, we are back again. This is Friday's edition of the College Football Focus podcast, and I am with you solo today. As you notice, Mark is not around. He had some other commitments to get to, but he will be back with us shortly. Today, we are going to delve into a subject that is probably near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. Which teams in each conference can make a big jump from near to the bottom of the standings into contention for the CFP. We saw Arizona State did that last season, and we are wondering if there are any other teams this year that maybe can do the same. I don't know if anyone is going to be able to get quite to that level where they came from literally out of nowhere to secure a college football playoff berth. But there are some teams that I think people aren't really thinking about that because of a confluence of some transfer portal pickups and maybe some schedule advantages that might be able to make it. So we are going to dive right in. And the first one that we are going to look at is the North Carolina State Wolfpack in the ACC. Now, we were thinking about Virginia. I know that Tony Elliott has been under some heat there, but Virginia, they actually have their best team in a long time. They don't face Clemson, Miami, or SMU. Good amount of experience back, but I'm not quite sure that the depth is there yet to truly challenge. Chandler Morris in at quarterback will make the Cavaliers a much better bunch, and I do think they get to a bowl. But the team that I ended up hitting on in the ACC was NC State. Remember last year, they entered with some high hopes having Grayson McCall back, but he ended up getting hurt. And when he went out for the season against Wake Forest, the things kind of ground to a halt offensively. Now, despite having a losing conference record, the Wolfpack actually were plus 12 in yards per game in conference play. So that usually portends a better record. There is a lot of experience back, and the usual path for folks who pay attention for an underachieving Dave Doran team is for it to follow up the next year with at least 8 wins. It wouldn't be a surprise, maybe if they got to 9. There's no Clemson, no SMU on the schedule, and they host Georgia Tech, which is thought to be one of the contenders this season. So to me, NC State is kind of flying under the radar, and that is precisely the way that Doran likes it. So don't be shocked if CJ Bailey and Hollywood Smothers and some of those guys can actually put a decent season together and maybe get the Wolfpack into surprise contention from being an also ran last year to an actual threat this year to maybe make the CFP with a few breaks. Moving on to the Big 12, we are looking at the Utah Utes. This was another one where it was kind of tough to decide. I thought about Kansas. They were a contender. Doesn't face Baylor or Arizona State, but they do have to go on the road to Texas Tech and Kansas State. Anytime you have Jalen Daniels back, it makes a team dangerous. And despite the losing season, there were not a lot of guys lost to the portal. So they definitely respect what Lance Leipold is doing there. And it wouldn't be at all a surprise if the Jayhawks jump into contention. However, in the end, I did go with Utah. They started 4-0, and they were really kind of humming. Then Cam Rising got hurt. They lost 7 straight, and that was pretty much all she wrote. Even with that, though, 4 of those losses were by a touchdown or less. They have an experienced offensive line led by Spencer Fano, who is an All-America selection at offensive tackle and is certain to be a high draft pick in the coming season. They do have some firepower that they got from the transfer portal in Devon Dampier, quarterback, and some receivers and the backfield. The defense allowed less than 23 points per game 4 years running, and that defense is kind of what kept them in games last year, and they look ready to get back into contention in what promises to be a wide open Big 12. Texas Tech, Arizona State, and Kansas State all have to come to Rice-Eccles, where the Utes are 20-5 over the last 4 seasons. Also, prior to their games with Arizona State and Baylor, Utah has off weeks. So do not underestimate the importance of those, because those are obviously 2 heavyweight teams that they'll be facing. Getting an extra week to heal up and kind of get back on schedule could certainly be a help. And you got to think that that will be maybe tilting a little bit in the favor of the Utes. Going into the Big Ten, there really was not truly a bad team last year that I can see jumping up to surprise. So we're just going to go with a team that actually had a winning record, but they barely had the winning record, and we think they can make a big leap into contention for the CFP, and that would be Nebraska. Matt Rhule certainly seems to have things trending in the right direction. They were sailing along at 5-1. They look like a lock for a bowl game. Then they lost 4 straight. Only a win over Wisconsin in the penultimate game of the season salvaged things and got them into a bowl. Now, Dylan Raiola should be much improved. You always talk about that sophomore jump. He should have that. He also has some good weapons and a mostly intact offensive line. And there's no Ohio State or Oregon on the schedule. So that is a big help. Michigan and USC have to go to Lincoln, and those obviously are games that are close that maybe the atmosphere in Lincoln can tilt that their way. Now, they do have to travel to Penn State late in the year. That is probably a game that they drop, but if they've got some momentum going, who knows? Maybe they can challenge the Nittany Lions. Now, even though they lost to both Ohio State and Iowa last season, they held a 38-16 first down edge in those games. So they were moving the ball. They were in the game. It was mostly turnovers and big plays that ended up losing games for them. So they were not that far away last year. Also, think about the year 3 rule for Matt Rhule. In his 3rd season at Baylor, he went 11-3. In his 3rd season at Temple, yeah, I'll say it again, Temple, he went 10-4. So I think double-digit wins this year certainly gets Nebraska into contention. Whether it's enough to get them in, I don't know, but they certainly would be in contention for a spot if they get to 10 wins, especially if they have a win over, say, a USC or a Penn State. If they can bag like a couple of premier victories, then they will definitely be right there. And last but not least, in the SEC, this one was razor thin. I originally was going to go with Auburn. Very intriguing. Gets an upgraded quarterback, has a lot of talent at receiver, and the offensive line. They were another team. Plus 62 yards on average on offense. That typically shows a team winning 6 or 7 games, but that was not the case with Auburn. They opened with Baylor, and that's going to kind of be an indicator of whether the Tigers are ready to surprise. However, Auburn ultimately took a backseat to the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, they are a team that seems to be polarizing just about everybody. Some people think that they are in line for a jump. Some people think that until Brent Venables gets out, they're not going to do anything. But you got to remember, even though they lost big to Texas, South Carolina, and LSU, they did beat Alabama. And the offense was a huge problem, ranking 10th in the league in scoring, but that's been fixed with the addition of John Mateer, who is in from Washington State, and he has the luxury of having his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, also along for the ride. Oklahoma couldn't run the ball at all last year, less than 4 yards a carry. Jaden Ott is in from Cal. He looks healthy and explosive once again, so he could be a guy who brings like that home run threat to the ground game. They also have an upgraded and healthy receiving core. They get LSU and Ole Miss at home, and they'll show whether the improvement is real when Michigan comes to Norman in week 2, because this will definitely be an improved Michigan team. Now, the Sooners defense held foes to 87 yards less per game than their average. So the defense was not a question, and they have a lot of guys back. So you got to think that if the offense improves even like 50%, that this is a team that really can cause some problems for people. They could be unbeaten heading into the Red River Shootout. And while the back half of the schedule is loaded, a win or a close loss against Texas, you would have to think, is going to provide a huge, huge confidence boost. So that would be something for Oklahoma to think about, and it would certainly help them recapture a lot of their glory. So those are the teams that we see having an ability to maybe jump up from the lower portion of the standings from last season and maybe making a run at the college football playoff. And the ACC, we'll go over them again. ACC was North Carolina State. The Big 12 was Utah. The Big 10 was Nebraska. And the SEC was Oklahoma. Let me know what you think. You can comment on the video below. Also, you can like and subscribe, and that will help you keep up on notifications on when we drop something new. So, again, we will be back on Monday with some all new content. And until then, everybody, take it easy.